The British family had always loved adventures. Oliver, the eldest son, had convinced them to take a trip to New York, not for sightseeing, but for something far darker. Haunted locations, abandoned buildings, and the thrill of the unknown. He had his camera with him, ready to document everything for his growing YouTube channel. The first evening in the city, the family checked into a modest hotel on the edge of Manhattan. The walls were old, the elevators creaked with every movement, and the air carried a faint metallic tang. Oliver immediately began recording. "Tonight we're starting small," he whispered to his camera. "Just a few abandoned streets, a haunted alley or two. But trust me, this city has stories most people don't dare to hear." His younger sister, Eliza, shivered as they stepped out. The streets were dimly lit, with flickering street lights and shadows that seemed too long, too deliberate. Every corner whispered secrets, and the occasional sound of distant laughter, or was it crying, made her stomach knot. "Are you sure this is safe?" she asked, clutching her brother's arm. "Safe isn't why we're here," Oliver replied with a grin, adjusting the camera. "It's to see what hides in the dark, to catch the city's ghosts on tape." Their first stop was an abandoned townhouse that had been empty for decades. Windows were shattered, doors hung crooked, and the smell of mold and decay seeped into their clothes. As they stepped inside, their flashlights barely penetrated the thick darkness. Every step they took made the wooden floorboards groan under the weight, echoing into the empty hallways. Oliver set his camera down, capturing the long corridors. "See that?" he whispered to his camera. "That shadow. Did you see it?" His parents and younger siblings froze. Nothing was moving, or so it seemed. But the shadows on the walls stretched unnaturally, bending as if alive. Then a faint whisper came from the end of the hallway. "Go back." Eliza's eyes widened. "Did you hear that?" "Yes," Oliver said softly. "But it's okay. It's just the house settling. Probably." A loud bang echoed from upstairs. The family jumped. Oliver motioned for everyone to stay calm, but his heart raced. He climbed the creaking staircase, camera in hand, every step threatening to snap under him. Upstairs, the hall was darker. The peeling wallpaper made ghostly patterns on the walls. A door at the far end was slightly ajar. As he approached, a cold gust of air swept past, carrying a faint smell of something rotting. Oliver stepped back, shining the flashlight into the room. Nothing. But then a figure flickered in the corner of his vision. Tall, thin, its face indistinct, but the presence unmistakable. Oliver turned quickly, but the hallway was empty. "Eliza, come look," he whispered to his sister, but she didn't move. She was staring at the far end of the hall, wide-eyed. Suddenly, the door slammed shut with a deafening crash. They all jumped, the sound echoing down the corridor like a gunshot. The shadows on the walls seemed to move closer, wrapping around them. Eliza screamed, and Oliver grabbed her hand. It's okay, we're leaving," he said, trying to sound confident, but his voice trembled. As they ran down the stairs, a cold hand brushed past Oliver's arm, not wet, not solid, but unmistakably there. He spun around, flashlight shaking, but no one was there. Only the shadows. Outside, the night air was thick with tension. The family tried to laugh it off, but their jokes were hollow. Something had followed them here, he realized, even if they couldn't see it. The city's ghosts were patient. They waited for mistakes, for moments of weakness, and soon they would test this family in ways they couldn't imagine. As they left the asylum behind, Oliver set the camera to record again. "If this goes online, people need to see it," he whispered. They need to know the city isn't just lights and streets. There's something here, something alive in the shadows. The family returned to their hotel, trying to rest, but sleep was impossible. Every creak, every flicker of light felt like the presence of those unseen eyes. And deep down, Oliver knew this was only the beginning.
The family could barely catch their breath after fleeing the asylum. Their hands trembled, their clothes were dust-streaked, and their hearts pounded in rhythm with the city's distant noises. Yet Oliver insisted they continue documenting their haunted tour. "This is exactly what the channel needs," he whispered, adjusting his camera. "Real experiences, real terror. People won't believe this unless they see it." Eliza clung to her mother, trembling. "I don't care about the channel anymore, Oliver. I just want to leave." Their next stop was an abandoned hospital nearby, a towering structure with shattered windows and a rusted sign that swung loosely in the wind. The building's exterior alone seemed alive, casting long, shifting shadows that crawled along the sidewalk like dark fingers. They entered cautiously. The main lobby was littered with broken furniture and yellowed papers. The smell of mildew and decay was almost suffocating. The walls bore strange scratches, jagged and deep, as if some clawed creature had roamed here long after the hospital had closed. Oliver set up his camera on a tripod in the center of the lobby. "I'm going to film each room. Step by step, we'll see if there's anyone or anything left inside." The first few rooms were silent. Dust floated in the air like tiny spirits, and broken medical equipment lay scattered across the floors. Then, in the pediatric ward, they found a small bed pushed against the wall, sheets yellowed and torn. On the pillow, a tiny handprint, perfectly formed, appeared damp as if someone had touched it recently. Eliza gasped, That's impossible!" Oliver leaned closer, camera rolling. It's real. Someone or something was here." As they moved deeper into the hospital, shadows seemed to stretch across the hallways, unnaturally long, almost breathing. The whispering began again. First a soft murmur, then hundreds of overlapping voices, echoing, chanting numbers. 1, 2, 3. Matthew, their youngest brother, began to cry, hiding behind his father. Suddenly, a door at the end of the hallway slammed open violently. A cold gust of air pushed them back. In the doorway stood a figure, tall, thin, completely black, with eyes that reflected no light. Its presence alone made the floorboards vibrate underfoot. "Run!" Oliver shouted, grabbing his siblings. But as they turned, the figure vanished, leaving only silence. They tried to leave through the main entrance, but the doors had locked themselves. Panic rose in waves. Then came the sounds, footsteps in the upper hallways, moving quickly and silently. The family froze. From above, a shadow fell, and in that instant, Ian, the youngest, was yanked upward by invisible hands, screaming as he vanished into the darkness. Eliza screamed, clutching her mother. "Ian!" "No!" Oliver yelled, but there was nothing he could do. The shadows were faster, stronger, and seemingly everywhere. The family scrambled through the hallways, barely avoiding grasping hands that seemed to spring from the walls themselves. The building itself seemed to fight them. Hallways lengthened impossibly. Doors led to empty rooms that stretched forever. And every step forward felt like running in place. The whispers grew louder, forming words that chilled them to the bone. "You cannot leave. You belong to us." In one room, they stumbled across the remnants of a former patient. The body was skeletal, but the eyes moved. The jaw opened, emitting a shrill, hollow scream. Matthew screamed and clutched his ears. The parents tried to comfort him, but there was no solace. The walls themselves seemed alive, twisting, bending, closing in around them. Suddenly, the sound of laughter, low, guttural, and mocking, filled the hallway. One by one, family members were separated, drawn into rooms or shadows that seemed to pull them inside. Eliza barely escaped a hand that grabbed her ankle, disappearing into the floor. Oliver's camera captured everything. Shadows flickered across walls, figures stretched impossibly, and the family's panic was raw and unfiltered. He stumbled through a narrow corridor, grabbing Eliza's hand. But the corridor ended abruptly. Before them was a wall of darkness, pulsing as though breathing. From the darkness, a voice hissed, "Only some will survive. The rest will feed us." Oliver's heart raced. He realized the truth. They weren't just haunted, they were being hunted. And whatever this was, it fed on fear, taking members of the family one by one, shaping their terror into power. Suddenly, Eliza screamed. A figure darted past, carrying Matthew in its long black arms. His cries echoed for only a moment before silence swallowed them. The family was torn. The remaining four, the parents, Oliver, and Eliza, ran blindly, not knowing which direction led to safety. Every turn seemed worse than the last. Doors led to nowhere, hallways twisted impossibly, and at every step, whispers counted them relentlessly. 4, 5, 6. Finally, they found an emergency stairwell. They bolted down the steps, crashing through a series of doors until the stairwell opened into the basement. The air was thick, dark, and filled with the stench of decay. Here the shadows were denser, more aggressive. Figures reached for them from every angle, moving just beyond the range of the flashlight. Oliver stumbled over a pipe, falling hard. Eliza screamed, grabbing him. One of the black figures lunged from the corner, but he rolled out of the way. The figure vanished into the walls with a soft, mocking hiss. Panting, bleeding, and trembling, the family finally reached an old tunnel that seemed to lead outside. It was narrow, suffocating, but the only chance for survival. They crawled through, shadows brushing their skin like cold fingers, and the counting voices echoing behind them. Emerging into the night, they collapsed onto the pavement. They thought they had escaped, but the city was quiet for the wrong reasons. Something followed, watching, waiting, and even as the adrenaline faded, a realization sunk in. The nightmare wasn't over, not by a long shot. Oliver looked at his camera, hands shaking. He knew one thing. If this footage survived, the world would see the truth. The city's shadows were alive, and anyone curious enough to wander into abandoned places would not walk away unscathed.
The night had grown heavier with fear. Oliver, Eliza, and the last remaining 3 family members, Tom, Lauren, and Nate, crawled through the narrow, suffocating tunnel, their flashlights flickering in tandem with their panicked heartbeats. Every shadow seemed to stretch impossibly long, every sound magnified. The air smelled of decay and wet stone pressing against their lungs. "I don't think we're going to make it," Lauren whispered, her voice shaking, tears streaking her dirty face. Oliver gritted his teeth. "We have to, just a little further. There has to be a way out." But the shadows weren't far behind. In the darkness, shapes moved like black smoke, twisting and stretching as they reached for the living. Whispers echoed, counting relentlessly. 7, 8, 9. Suddenly, Nate screamed. Something had grabbed his ankle. He kicked and twisted, but invisible hands pulled him down into the darkness. His flashlight clattered to the floor, illuminating a fleeting glimpse of a faceless skeletal figure dragging him beneath the shadows. His screams were abruptly cut off, replaced by silence. "Eliza! Nate!" Oliver shouted. But he knew in his gut there was no saving him.
The remaining 4 ran faster, the tunnel narrowing further. Then the walls themselves seemed to breathe, pulsating, black mist spilling into the corridor like liquid night. Tom tripped and fell, and when he tried to rise, shadowy fingers erupted from the floor, wrapping around his limbs. He struggled, screamed, but the shadows dragged him down, crushing him into the darkness. Lauren's cries pierced the air. She grabbed Oliver, pulling him forward. "We have to go! Now!" They emerged into a dilapidated underground chamber, flooded with faint, sickly yellow light. At the center stood a massive, inhuman figure, the Jinn. Its body was impossible to describe, a shifting mass of darkness with hollow eyes that seemed to absorb light. Around it, countless smaller, faceless entities, the spirits of those already consumed, hovered, waiting. Oliver raised his camera, filming everything. This is it, the truth," he whispered, voice trembling. The Jinn's eyes focused on him. It smiled, or at least the closest thing to a smile existed on its ever-shifting form. You survived far too long," it hissed. "But all things end." Lauren screamed as the smaller spirits lunged, their limbs like long, thin blades slicing through the air. Eliza tried to dodge, but one of the shadows wrapped around her throat, lifting her into the air. Her feet kicked frantically, but she could not escape. Oliver ran toward her, but the Jinn's massive form blocked his path. With a swift, terrifying movement, it tore him from the ground, lifting him effortlessly into the air. His screams echoed, then abruptly stopped. Lauren tried to fight, but the shadows engulfed her next. Tom and Nate were already gone, swallowed in the tunnel's darkness. One by one, the living succumbed to the relentless, merciless entities. Eliza was the last. She tried to run, clawing at the walls, but the chamber seemed endless. The Jinn's presence pressed on her, its whispers like thousands of voices inside her mind. "You belong to us. No one leaves. No one survives." And then it was over. The shadows consumed her entirely. The camera Oliver had dropped earlier lay on the ground, still recording. For a moment, it captured a fleeting image of her face, eyes wide with terror, mouth open in a silent scream, before the darkness swallowed everything. The chamber fell silent. Only the hum of the camera remained. Outside, the city continued as if nothing had happened. The streets were empty. The wind carried no warning. But beneath the surface, deep in the tunnels and abandoned buildings, the Jinn and its minions waited, patiently, hungry for the next curious souls. The footage Oliver had taken would later surface on his abandoned channel, unedited, showing only fragments, shadows darting impossibly, screams echoing through empty hallways, and the final horrific vision of a faceless, shifting entity towering over the doomed family. Those who watched reported feeling chills, hearing faint counting in the silence after the video ended. And in the dark corners of New York, something still moves, watching, waiting, always counting. The city's secrets are not meant for the living, and those who seek them never truly leave.